All right. Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. This topic here that I wanted to talk about, go on a little. I'm gonna get a little bit on my Malcolm X vibe today. So, um, you know how Malcolm X he of course he talked about Islam, and he also dealt with the political issues of his time. He dealt with the history and things like that. So I want to kind of get on my Malcolm X vibe today and kind of take that line of that issue today. We're gonna be in that line of discussion today. All right. So as many of you should know, yesterday was America's Day of Independence, right? July 4th. The original date was July 4th, 1776, the year. And over the years, and of course, even in recent times, there's been this thing about America's history in regards to other people, and how the of course the celebration of independence is not always taken by everyone in the country due to America's history, right? Wa alaikum salam, brother Amarul and Afiq and JS, and I am Mumin. Wa alaikum salam, brother Sammy, welcome, alhamdulillah. Appreciate you all checking in. Don't forget, everyone, before I begin, to like the video. If you aren't a subscriber, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click that bell, which is the notification button. All right. So that way, whenever we do a video, you'll be notified and you can chime in. For those who watch this stream later, same thing. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. You know what I'm saying? Set the notification. And don't forget to support your brother. Like I said, in the description of the video, we have the links where you can support our platform so we can expand and grow. All right. So you can utilize any of those links in the description of this video. All right. So let's get back to the discussion. So as I said, again, yesterday was the 4th of July, which is America's Day of Independence. But if you know the history of America, you know that was not the day of independence for everyone in the country. Right? For Black Americans, it was not America's Day of Independence because at that time, the majority of America's Black inhabitants were unfortunately in a state of bondage and slavery. Right? Of course, you know about the mistreatment of the Native Americans who were here and who were, slaughtered and murdered, massacred, genocide against them, their land taken, or they were moved off of their land, So, it wasn't the Day of Independence for everyone. So for many of us, or some of us, it's a day of hypocrisy due to that historical fact. And since today is the day after that, I wanted to discuss some of the hypocrisy of America's history in regards to freedom and standing up against injustice and fighting for freedom in the face of the rebellions that we've seen taking place over the last few weeks due to a series of injustices that have taken place, whether from the killing of the young man Ahmed Arbery, wa alaikum salam, Macho Man, welcome, to the killing of the young lady Breonna Taylor, and then of course the one that seemed to light the fuse was the killing of George Floyd. And of course, the reason why these things sprung out into an explosion of anger and outrage was due to the fact that, in a lot of these cases, there's always this injustice where the perpetrators are not punished. Now, in this case, at least with the George Floyd, the perpetrators have at least been arrested thus far, and we'll see if they'll be punished when their trial takes place. But it took the anger of the people exploding into anger and outrage to get that, you see? And that's what the problem is. The Breonna Taylor, we're still waiting for the officers who shot her and, who wrongly shot her to be arrested. We're still waiting for that, for Breonna Taylor. With the Ahmed Arbery case, they've been arrested. We're waiting for their trial. But again, it only took place because people had to come in outrage, right? with the Ahmaud Arbery case, for example, we only found out about it 2 months after the incident. Many people don't know that we found out about the incident 2 months after the incident. So in other words, the men who killed him, they were sitting home relaxing like nothing happened, right? No remorse for taking a man's life. They were sitting home chilling, relaxing at home without a problem for 2 months. You see, 2 months, and really nothing was going to happen to them until people found out about it. Nothing was going to happen to these men until people found out about it. You see, that's what anger. That's where the anger started to build. Then after that, we heard about what happened with Breonna Taylor, right? You know, they go to the wrong house, and with a no-knock warrant, meaning that the police usually they have to knock on your door, let them know that they have a warrant to arrest you or to search your property, and then you let them in. Or if once they knock and you don't let them in, you refuse, they can then break in. But they have to at least let you know that we're here and we have the permission, we have the warrant to arrest you or to search your house or whatever, right? But a no-knock warrant, which thank Allah that they have banned it, and now they've said no more. They're not going to allow any more no-knock warrants. A no-knock warrant is where the police can just come and bust in your house. They don't have to let you know that they're there. They don't have to knock. They don't have to announce their presence. They can just bust in your house and, do whatever, arrest you or search, whatever, depending on the type of warrant that it is. So here in this case, the person that they were looking for had already been arrested, right? Had already been arrested. And due to the no-knock warrant, as they broke in, since they didn't announce themselves, the young man and his significant other were in the house. They thought somebody was breaking in since the police did not announce themselves. And what saved the young man, which at first he wasn't saved, was that, as they heard the police breaking in, they called the police to say, hey, somebody's breaking into our house. Can you send help? So as the police break in, he, within his rights, thinks that somebody's breaking in, and he defends his home and fires a shot or two at the people who he thinks are breaking in. Turns out, unfortunately, was the police. Now, they start shooting, and they wind up killing his girlfriend or whatever she was to him, significant other. They wind up killing her while she's in the bed, right? He survived, and then they arrest him for attempted murder on the police, knowing that they didn't knock, and even knowing that they have the proof that he called the police. That's what saved him, was the fact that he calls the police and says, hey, somebody's trying to break in. So that lets them know that obviously he didn't know it was the police, and he didn't try to kill a police officer. But that's how crooked they are, is that they still arrested him and they still charged him with murder of a police, tried to charge him with attempted murder of a police officer, knowing that he obviously didn't know. That's how dirty they are. That's how corrupt they are. So thank Allah that they had a judge who was reasonable and who realized that obviously he was not trying to kill a police officer. They let him go. But the still fact that their negligence killed his girlfriend or his significant other, right? They killed her, and nobody has been arrested, right? They were negligent in their actions on the job, and they cost this woman her life. They should be arrested. How is it that people can be on other jobs, and if you're negligent, you get punished, right? Depending on the level of the negligence that you committed. You might get reprimanded, or you may lose your job. And in a case like this was a serious, they cost somebody their life because of their negligence. They already had the person who did not live at their house, right? Who was not at their house. They already had that person arrested. So this was negligence all around. That they already had the person arrested from earlier in the day or a day ahead of time. And then they still go to this house mistakenly and commit this negligent act, right? And so people are still calling for the police officers who negligently killed this lady to be arrested, and nothing has happened. And then after that is George Floyd takes place after that. And then that was it. That's when people said enough is enough. And you saw the riots that ensued after that. And here's the part where I want to jump in with today's topic, is to talk about America's hypocrisy. Because you see, what's interesting, and by the way, this what I'm doing here, this particular tactic of using their history to show that they're hypocrites when it comes to this type of thing, is something that I got this from Malcolm X. Because if you look at a lot of Malcolm X's speeches, you would see that when he a lot of times talk about Black Americans fighting against the injustice of America, he always would remind them of their history and how that when they wanted, when the forefathers of those in power today, right? When you look back at their ancestors, when they were abused, when they were fed up with the injustices that were being perpetrated upon them by England, by the British, right? By King George of England, by the Redcoats, right? What they did is that they, they rose up. They didn't peacefully march in the streets. They didn't have sit-ins and sing songs and have prayer meetings, right? They didn't do that. They rose up against the British, against the Redcoats, and they fought them, physically fought them. So Malcolm would remind them of their history and how it's hypocritical for them to, to be upset and to criticize Black Americans for rising up against their violence. He also called them out on their hypocrisy in that the fact that how is it that they could not see and remember their own history of being faced with injustice, and then they perpetrate that same injustice against fellow citizens who are of a different skin color. So I'm taking a page out of the book of Malcolm X in what I'm talking about in today's topic, because as you may have seen, due to the protests and rebellions that I call them rebellions, right? We call them rebellions that have taken place. Many people have criticized the protests. They criticize the pulling down. Right now, you see that they're pulling down statues, right? They're pulling down statues of people who should have never been given statues in the first place, right? Christopher Columbus should have never been given, especially here in America. I don't know why Christopher Columbus has a statue here in America. Number one, Christopher Columbus did not ever come to mainland America. Did you guys know that? Christopher Columbus never came to mainland North America. He never came here. So he did not discover America. That's a complete lie. Christopher Columbus went down in the Caribbean. He didn't discover that either, because obviously they were the Taino people, the Arawak Indians. They were already on those islands that he went to, which they called, Hispaniola or whatever, right? He didn't come to mainland America, so he did not discover America in the first place. And even if he came here, which he did not, it still wasn't discovered because there were people there already. This is why people are upset and why they're now realizing and they're pulling these statues down. And not only that, but he was also a genocidal murderer at that. Christopher Columbus. So this is why they're now pulling down the statues of these people. People like, if you're familiar with American history, Robert E. Lee, right? These are people from what they call the Confederates. And if you know American history, the Confederates were the southern states that wanted to break off from the rest of America at that time. And they broke off, seceded, also considered seditionists and traitors to the United States, right? And they fought a civil war. So those guys were traitors. And they were white racists. They were white supremacists. If you look up their statements, you will see that that's exactly what they believed in. They believed in white supremacy. They believed and stated very clearly that blacks should be enslaved, and they were fighting to keep blacks enslaved because they believed in white supremacy. They say that in their documents. They literally say that in their documents. So people, again, are upset and realize that because of all this racism that has gone on and all these events building up upon each other, that people are like, you know what? We want white supremacy needs to finally be brought down. So now they're pulling down statues of Christopher Columbus. They're pulling down statues of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and all these other people who have a history of being racist here in America. Right? They're removing names of people who were racist. Presidents, like now Woodrow Wilson's name is being removed from Princeton University, I believe it is. Again, another person who was known to be racist. There's documented evidence of their statements that prove they were racist. So we wonder and we ask ourselves, why were their names placed on these buildings? So in other words, it's like they're spitting in our faces. by honoring these people, by putting their names on these buildings, by putting up statues up here. It's like they're indirectly, subtly, in a slick way, trying to tell us that they believe in white supremacy. They believe in white racism. Why would you honor these people if that wasn't the case? So now people are upset and they're pulling these statues down. You've seen the violent uprisings, right? Some of it though, be careful. We see that there may have been agent provocateurs involved, because a lot of the footage of people breaking glasses, you find out that they are Caucasians or white people, dressed up, and they were the ones seen to be breaking the glasses and starting fires and things like that. So we have to also be careful about that. But nonetheless, when you see the criticisms of these things, right? Number one, the criticizers ignored that we see that it was a lot of white people that were actually breaking the glasses of stores and starting fires, right? But nonetheless, the criticizers of these events are criticizing the uprisings and rebellions. And many times I've had arguments with people, especially on Twitter, reminding them of their own history and how their forefathers, because they say, oh, this is not the American way, this is not how we do it. Well, not quite, not so fast, not so fast. Actually, it is the American way. That is how America gained its freedom. And I'm going to show you and teach you a lesson on that. So let's get into that. Let's get into that right now. Okay, let's get into that right now. So as you see here, you see what appears to be a violent confrontation. And that's exactly what it is. These are, as you see, New York riot, Colonial riot. Hello, America, your forefathers. That's why I say yours, because obviously these were your people. My people were enslaved at this time. So your forefathers at this time rioted when they were fed up with the injustice. So it indeed is the American way to violently rise up against injustice. But you're hypocrites. It's ironic that when you now become the violators of justice, now all of a sudden you forget your history. And now, but isn't that always how it happens, right? Isn't that always how it happens? Look at the Israelis, for example. Look at the Israelis, for example. Unfortunately, it seems like that happens a lot. People forget that when they were the oppressed ones, when they were the ones being mistreated and abused, they forget what they suffered. And then when they come into power, they now become the oppressors themselves. And then when those to whom they are abusing and mistreating begin to rise up, now they forget that, hey, we used to be in that position. And now they call the people who are uprising, they call them terrorists, they call them all kinds of names. And yet they are doing the same thing that your forefathers had done when they were mistreated. And now that you become the abuser and the mistreater, you forget your history. You forget your history. And now you wonder why the people are rising against you, yet you don't remember your history. So here we see the colonialists rising up. And as you see, they're fighting against the redcoats. The redcoats are the soldiers and perhaps the police of the British Empire at the time. So the redcoats are like the police of today in America, who are the abusers on behalf of the power structure. And as you see here, the colonialists are fed up with the abuse of the redcoat police, and they're fighting them back, as you can see. You see that? You see the picture? They're fighting. They're fighting them. You see? It's a riot starting, a violent riot. So how is it that when your forefathers were upset and had enough of the abuse, we celebrate this, everybody? We celebrate these uprisings. We don't say, oh, those were thugs, right? When I was taught American history in school, nobody said these colonialists were thugs and savages and animals for fighting against the redcoats. No, they're applauded. They're celebrated, right? We honor, well, they honor them, right? They honor them as freedom fighters, patriots who stood up against injustice. They love it. They're applauded. They're honored. Now that the descendants of those uprisers and rioters become the people in power, and now you are the violators, now you are the blue coats in your blue uniforms oppressing and abusing people, and people get fed up and rise up against you. Now those people are thugs. Now those people are thugs. Animals, savages, and whatever other names they call them. But if again, you forget your history. You forget your history as you see on the screen. And here, let's read a little bit about this incident that took place in New York. It says that New York Colonia riot. It says a fracas between New Yorkers and British soldiers in 1766. The Americans had restored a Liberty pole cut down by the Redcoats. So basically, you know, the police, the Redcoats, who were the police of the time, had cut down, a symbol of liberty that the people put up. And so they started fighting about it to put it back up. Right? Let's take a look at another one. Here's another violent protest. And look at the fire. Look at the fire being set. So I guess those white people that we saw setting fires were, I don't know who they are, if they're Antifa or if they're undercover agents, whoever they are, or, they may have been agent provocateurs or whatever. But whoever they are, they're acting like their forefathers. As you can see the fires in the picture. See that? They started fires too. Look at the riot. Look at the picture. Look at them. They're rioting. Look at them destroying property. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Looks familiar, doesn't it? So how are people claiming that it's not the American way? Yes, it is. Yes, it is the American way. Stop telling people that that's not the American way. It is the American way. Your forefathers did it. So if these young people out here today they're just doing what your forefathers did. They're acting like true American patriots, actually, by being fed up with the injustice, being fed up with the abuse. And look what they're doing. Look at the picture. Your forefathers, they're copying, they're acting like their forefathers. They're acting like your forefathers. So how are you criticizing them? Oh, I know why you're criticizing them, because you have now become the oppressor. That's what it is. You have now become the oppressor, and you don't want done to you what was done to King George. But I guarantee you, King George didn't want that to happen to them either. But we felt, right? You felt your forefathers were in the right, that they had a right to rise up against King George. Well, then why don't black people have a right to do the same thing? And again, this is the same thing Malcolm X said. This is the same thing Malcolm X said. He said, how can you criticize? It's not like you're trying to be fair, right? It's not like you're attempting to give justice and people are uprising unjustifiably. No, people have complained. They've talked about it. They've marched. They've spoken out. And the abuse continues. Remember in the other video I showed you guys, when I showed that picture of Malcolm X holding up a newspaper from his time period, right? And what was the cover of the newspaper? What did it say? You would have thought that it was 2020, because the title was the same thing. 7 unarmed Negroes, that's what they called black people back then. 7 unarmed Negroes shot by police. What are we arguing? What are we yelling about today? Same thing. Unarmed black people being shot by police. Unarmed black people being beat up by the police, brutalized by the police, abused by the police. Right? Same thing that he was talking about decades ago is still being talked about and complained about in 2020. So the same way the Redcoats and the Kingdom of England didn't listen to the American colonialists is the same way black people feel. It's the same way black people feel. And look, your history shows that when your people got fed up with injustice, what did you do? You didn't peacefully march. You didn't peacefully protest. You rose up, and look at the picture. Look what you did. Look what you did. And yesterday we celebrated that. Yesterday was, not we. I didn't celebrate it. I don't celebrate it because I know the history. But they celebrated this right here that you see in the picture and the other picture. All of that yesterday was a celebration of all these pictures that I'm showing you. It was the culmination of the uprisings until they finally went to a full out war. Until it came to a full out war. Because that's what they did. They rioted. They rioted. They did all these things here until it finally culminated into an all-out war against the British, where they finally got their complete independence. Right? Where they finally got their complete independence. I don't know if America wants it to get that far. Right? I don't know if you want it to go that far. Right? I don't know if you want it to go that far. But we could perhaps see a future if these things don't get addressed, that it could happen and America could be destroyed in the future. And I don't think you want that, right? I don't think anybody wants that. So perhaps the people in power who continue to perpetrate the systemic racism and the abuse, perhaps you may want to start to listen and see if we can stave off that ever happening. And it appears that some people are trying, right? There are calls for police reform. Some states are passing police reform bills. The federal government is talking about it. So perhaps there may be a change, inshallah, perhaps, where it won't have to come to that, perhaps, right? But nonetheless, this is the hypocrisy. And what about pulling down statues? Let's take a look at that. Look at this one. Look at this. See how they you might have seen, like, for example, on Fox News, where the Fox News commentators have been talking and their people are talking. Even Robert Spencer, our good friend, I'm being sarcastic, our good friend Robert Spencer, I saw on his page, on his Twitter, he was even complaining about the pulling down of statues. Of course, complaining about the pulling down of statues of people who were known to be white racists. So that lets us know what side Robert Spencer's on, right? Which we already talked about that. So we already know what side he's on. But notice how they were upset about the pulling down of these statues of people who represent injustice, who represent racism. Well, look what the colonialists did when they were fed up with the injustices of their oppressor. What did they do? They pulled down his symbol. So again, pulling down statues of people who don't deserve to be honored, pulling down statues of people who represent injustice and abuse of power was an American thing. So look, when the Americans got fed up, what did they do? They didn't want his statue to be in their midst, and rightfully so. So they pulled down the statue of the British King George. They pulled his statue down, and rightfully so. It makes no sense to honor and have a statue of a person who represents an injustice to you and your people. So I don't blame the colonialists for doing that. I don't blame them for pulling down his statue. Why should they have his statue? Why should they honor him in their midst? Well, look, the same thing here in America then. Why should we honor Christopher Columbus? Why should Native Americans honor Christopher Columbus? Why should Black Americans honor him? His coming to Hispaniola opened up the way for other European explorers to then come to the Americas, which opened up the way for the genocide against the native indigenous people, which opened up the way for Africans to be brought to America and turned into slaves, my ancestors, right? It opened the door for all of that. So why should we honor that? And even if you're a white American, why should you honor them either? Unless you stand for white supremacy. So as a white American, why should you honor Christopher Columbus either? When that's what he did, and he didn't discover America anyway. If you're a good white American who's not a racist, then yes, why should you honor Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and the various other Confederate white supremacists? Why should you honor them? Or even presidents, Woodrow Wilson, etc. Why should you honor them when they were known racists? When their own writings and documents tell us how they thought? Why should they be honored? Why should they have statues? Why should their names be on buildings? You see? So notice they celebrate the pulling down of the statues of England. They celebrate that because they understood we don't honor a tyrant. We don't honor an abuser, a person who perpetrates injustice. So they pulled down his statue. All right? Look, they pulled down his statues. And again, they celebrate this. But look how hypocritical they are when the same thing is being done to them when they became the oppressors themselves. Now it's savagery. Now these people are animals. Well, then your forefathers were animals. Then your forefathers were savages then, because the people today are doing the same thing that your ancestors did. If the people today are savages and animals, then your forefathers were savages and animals too. But you won't say that, will you? You won't say that, will you? You honor them, right? You honor them. Look at them pulling down the statues of King George. Look at the fires. Look at the fires being started. Everyone. Right? Here is a picture of the Boston Tea Party, where where they destroyed property. Look, they just look at, as you can see, they're throwing all the boxes of the tea because of the taxation, the unfair, unjust taxation. They're throwing it in the water, which is destroying the property. Right? And again, this is celebrated. The Boston Tea Party is a celebrated rebellion. Right? It's one of the celebrated incidents. They celebrated the destroying of property. So how dare these people today talk about, oh, the looters and all of that? They're hypocrites. These people are hypocrites. Right? They're hypocrites. Straight up hypocrites. Right? We see that they had riots where they looted and destroyed. Here's the Stamp Act riots. This is all American history. Right? Where they destroyed property, you know, and they committed violence. When you read the what they did during the Stamp Act riots, they actually beat people up. Listen to this, man. Listen to what they did here. Let me share how they destroyed property. It says Andrew Oliver could have been excused if he didn't feel very welcome in his hometown of Boston. After waking up on August 14, 1765, the wealthy 59-year-old merchant and provincial official learned that his effigy was hanging from a century-old elm tree in front of Deacon Elliott's house. After dusk, angry Bostonians paraded Oliver's likeness through the streets and destroyed the brick. You heard that? They destroyed the brick building he had recently built. So they destroyed property when they were fed up. They destroyed his building he had recently built along the waterfront. In case Oliver still hadn't received the hint, the mob beheaded his effigy in front of his finally appointed home before throwing stones through his windows. So they broke windows too. Hypocrites. You hypocrites, your forefathers broke windows too. They destroyed buildings also. So it appears that the protesters are just doing the American thing. This is clearly the American way, you hypocrites. This is just they're just doing what your forefathers did. So why are you upset? You should be applauding them the same way you applauded your forefathers. But again, you became what your forefathers were fighting against, right? You became your forefathers from England rather than your forefathers from the American colonies, right? So you're still acting like your forefathers. You're just acting like your forefathers prior to them coming to America. You're acting like your English forefathers who were oppressive and tyrannical and abusive with their power. That's who you're acting like, rather than your your so-called freedom fighting ancestors. But see the violence that they did? You see that? They threw stones through his windows. They demolished his carriage house and imbibing the contents of his wine cellar. So that means they looted everybody. They took the stuff that was in his wine cellar. They looted. So again, the protesters who are looting, burning, breaking glasses, destroying property, they are doing the American thing because that's what your freedom fighting forefathers did. How quickly you forget your history, right? How quickly you forget your history, right? So this is the violence. So let's read a little bit here. Let's read this column right here. It says that the Stamp Act was the first direct tax on internal commerce rather than a duty on external trade goods imposed on the American colonies, and it had colonists who believed that only their own representative assemblies could levy direct taxes in an uproar. When news of the Stamp Act arrived in May, newly elected Patrick Henry railed against the law in the Virginia House of Burgesses and led the adoption of the radical Virginia Resolves, which denied the right of an unrepresentative parliament to tax the colonies. In Boston, opposition moved, listen to this, from fiery rhetoric to inflamed violence, fanned by a secret organization, does that sound familiar? Known as the Loyal Nine. Doesn't that sound like the same thing they're saying about Antifa, right? They claim Antifa is a supposed, underground organization that perpetrates acts of violence. But once again, that's what your forefathers did. They created secret organizations known as the Loyal Nine. Listen to what they did. The clandestine group of artisans and shopkeepers printed pamphlets and signs protesting the tax and incited the mob that ransacked Oliver's house. So they didn't just protest and hand out pamphlets, they destroyed his house. Okay? Again, this is the American way. This is the American way. It says the Stamp Act commissioned colonial distributors to collect a tax in exchange for handing out the stamps to be affixed to documents, and Oliver, without his knowledge, had been appointed the distributor for Massachusetts. The day after his property had been destroyed, Oliver resigned a position he never asked for and one he never held, since the Stamp Act wasn't due to take effect until November 1st. The resignation, however, didn't douse the violent protest in Boston. On August 26, another mob attacked the home of Oliver's brother-in-law. Wow, look, they started going after his family. Another mob attacked the home of Oliver's brother-in-law, Lieutenant Governor Thomas Hitchison. The rioters stripped the mansion, one of the finest in Boston, of its doors, furniture, paintings, silverware, and even the slate from its roof. What's that sound like, everybody? Looters. The protesters looted the house of this man in their anger and outrage over the injustice that they were facing. So I repeat, when people say that's not the American way, that's not how they do it in America, wrong. That is the American way. That's how your forefathers got their freedom. That's how your forefathers expressed their outrage over the injustices and abuse that they were facing from Britain. So you're wrong when you say that's not the American way. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is the American way. And I want to make it clear. I'm not encouraging. I don't want my words, what I'm saying here, to be misconstrued. I'm not encouraging anybody to violently protest. OK, I'm not encouraging anybody to go out and commit any acts of violence or destroying a property. I repeat, I'm not encouraging that. But what I am doing, I am showing the hypocrisy of the people who are criticizing these people and calling them animals and savages and saying that that's not the American way. I'm exposing your hypocrisy. That's my purpose here. I repeat, I'm not encouraging anybody to go out and do any such acts. But I am exposing the double standard and hypocrisy of the people today who forget that that's exactly the way that their forefathers and their ancestors expressed their outrage against the injustices that they were facing, and your hypocrisy that you celebrate them doing so. You celebrate it, you teach it to us in school, and you celebrate it. You celebrate the violence. Right? For those who don't know, why do you think on 4th of July in America that people light fireworks? Why do we do that? You know why they do that? The fireworks represent the violence. The fireworks are a representation, a symbolic representation and commemoration of the bombs that were blowing up during the war. Right? The bombs, the explosion, the sounds of the gunfire. That's what the fireworks represent. So those of you who are brothers and sisters who have immigrated to the United States. Last night, you heard it, right? Last night, you heard all kinds of pops and booms and explosions and pop, 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 and boom, bam, boom, right? You heard all of that last night, right? You heard all of that. What does that represent? Why did they do that? It represents the war. It represents the violence of how America got its freedom from a tyrant king of England and an empire. So it's celebrated. But interesting how when you want to rise up against them, now they want you to be peaceful. Now they want you to forgive and forget, right? Every time it's them, the oppressors, they want you to do it another way. In South Africa, they didn't want Nelson Mandela and the ANC to rise up violently. Oh no, do it another way. Do it another way. In America, when Malcolm X and the Black Panthers spoke and started saying, hey, we need to get guns and protect ourselves. Oh no, you're wrong. Do it another way. Do it another way. Right? They always want us to do it another way. But that's not how they did it. That's not how they did it. That's not how they did it. They didn't beg King George. They didn't march in the streets with signs and beg for King George to listen to them. They didn't march in the streets with peaceful signs saying, redcoats, stop beating us up. Stop killing us, right? No, we know. I'm showing you how they handled it. But when it comes to us, oh, they don't want to do it like that. Even we can even take this example to other countries. When they go to Palestine, what do they want you to do? Right? The Americans, what do they want you to do in Palestine against the injustice of the Israelis? They want you to be peaceful. They want you to protest peacefully. But again, that's not the American way. You would think that America would be on the Palestinian side in the conflict rather than the Israelis, right? You would think that the Americans would side with Palestine and say, you, Palestine, you remind us. You remind us of ourselves. You remind us of our history when we fought against the injustice of the British. You're like us. Instead, who's America's on? Whose side are they on? They're on the side of the oppressor, the Israelis. The Israelis are like King George and the Redcoats. The Israelis are King George and the Redcoats. So America should be on the side of the Palestinians rather than the side of the Redcoats, i.e. the Israelis. All the time, whenever they go, they're always on the other side. And I've said this before. They support the kings of countries that abuse their people. Yet they fought against a king that was tyrannical. Right? Isn't that hypocritical? Isn't that hypocrisy? You would think that America around the world would be on the side of the oppressed people. You would think that they would always side with those who are fighting against their tyrannical kings, their dictatorial leaders. Instead, they help these people. They're on their side. They befriend them. They're allies with kings. Yet America's foundation was against kingdoms. It was against the king who was tyrannical. It was against the king who restricted the freedom of the people. It was against the king that abused his subjects. So you would think that would be America's way of operating throughout the world. But instead, that's not its way. All too often, America has forgot its history and they side with the tyrannical king. They side with the king who abuses his own subjects. They side with kings anyway. I wouldn't, if I was the leader of America, I would follow the operation of America and I would never be on the side of any king, right? Because I would say our history shows that our history started with being against kings. So I would say America's way of operation and foreign policy should be to never be on the side of a king. Since we started off being against king, we should never be on the side of any king. But that's their hypocrisy. That's their hypocrisy, right? That's their hypocrisy. So as you can see from what I'm reading to you here, this is from, as you see from History Channel, it shows that they were violent. They were violent. They destroyed property. They looted. They did all those things. They did all those things. You know what I mean? They did all those things. They did all those things that they criticize today. Right? Pulling down statues, violent protests, right? Destroying property, looting. They looted everything. You see, I read about how they looted. They did all of that. They looted. They did all these things that they criticize today, everyone. And lastly, I wanted to make a point about, where is it at? I want to make a point about this. Wait, no, this one right here. Nope, that's not it either. I wanted to make a point about, where is it? Oh, here we go. Yeah, right here. I wanted to make a point about having statues of people who, as I said, I already showed you how they pulled down, the statues of King George. And today in America, as far as I know, there are no statues of King George. We don't honor any British redcoat soldiers. But yet they want to honor people who were traitors against America. They want to honor the Confederates. So I said, you know what? There's this person whose name is Benedict Arnold, right? You ever heard that expression? For those of you who are in America, there's an expression of a traitor. Whenever somebody is two-faced, whenever somebody is like, somebody who is a traitor against you, we used to call him, you're a Benedict Arnold. That's the name of this particular man in American history who was a traitor to the American Revolution during the American Revolution against the British. He was a colonialist and he actually fought on their side, and then he traded against them. He became a two-faced spy, a double agent, and he traded against the Americans and went back to the British. Right? His name is Benedict Arnold. So his name became an epithet where when somebody was to be a traitor against you, you would call them a Benedict Arnold. Right? You say, oh man, you're a Benedict Arnold, man. You know what I mean? You traded against me, or you went against me, right? Call him a Benedict Arnold. So I said, I wonder, since America wants to keep these statues of the Confederates, which, thank Allah that they're starting to take them down, right? It says, wouldn't it be amazing that if America, does America honor its traitors? Do they honor Benedict Arnold? There's no statues of Benedict Arnold. So I wanted to make sure. So I looked it up. And the only thing I could find is this right here, as you see in the picture. This is and it's funny, right? They call it the foot statue or something like that. Excuse me. The boot monument. Excuse me. They call it the boot monument. And basically what this is, they say, is that this is a monument to Benedict Arnold's leg. So they're basically mocking him. They don't even have a full, because they don't remember. And they said that his name is not mentioned on this monument at all. So they don't even mention his name on the monument. And rightfully so. Why would they honor a traitor? Right? Why would America want to honor a traitor to their country? So basically, it's like they're making a mockery of him. They have a monument to his leg because before he traded, he actually was a general in the American Revolutionary Army. And he did, he actually did some pretty good stuff before he became a traitor. But they still don't honor him. So what they did is they made this monument to his leg, they say. Right? They put up a monument to his leg, but they say his name is not mentioned at all. They don't commemorate his name or anything. So I guess they kind of mocked him by just making a monument to his leg where his name is not mentioned at all. So it says Arnold's defecation made him into an instant villain in the United States. Residents of Philadelphia paraded a two-faced effigy of him down the streets. Newspapers compared him to Lucifer and Judas. And the Continental Congress passed a resolution permanently erasing him from the Army Register. They should do the same thing with the Confederates. The Confederates were traitors. Their name should be erased as well. There should be no statues of any Confederate soldiers because they were just as bad as Benedict Arnold, right? They were just as bad, if not worse, because they created a whole army against the United States. All he did, which was still bad, was that he traded and went to the other side. But the Confederates were worse than him because they traded against the United States and created a whole army to go to war against their own country. So they're worse than him. And yet here we have statues of them. But thank Allah that people are starting to take them down. You know what I mean? Thank Allah that they're starting to pull these statues down and get rid of them. So here it says that they passed a law to permanently erase him from the Army Register. It says Arnold's mixed reputation as both a war hero and traitor was later set in stone at New York Saratoga National Historical Park, which features an unusual boot monument. Which features an unusual boot monument to his twice wounded leg, while the maker includes a dedication to the brilliant soldier who was desperately wounded during the Battle of Saratoga. It avoids mentioning Benedict Arnold by name. So they're not really honoring him at all, right? They're like, okay, well, he was a good general, but here they made a mockery of him. His name is not mentioned, and all they did was a monument to his leg. Right? So I'm correct. They don't have any statues of Benedict Arnold to honor him. How much more so Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis and various other, generals. I mean, check this out, everybody, for those who don't know, which you may have heard in the news. They even have names of these Confederates on U.S. military bases. To me, that's the ultimate mockery. To me, that's the ultimate insult. Why would you name federal United States military bases after people who were traitors? Imagine a military base named after Benedict Arnold. Imagine that. You would never do it, right? Because he deserves no respect. He's a traitor, right? He's a traitor, right? Why would they honor him? They wouldn't. So why should Confederate soldiers and generals have their names on United States military bases when those bases are United States bases and those guys were traitors to the United States? Their names should not be anywhere in this country. Same thing like in Nazi Germany. The same way Nazi Germany disavows any respect for the Nazis, right? They don't have any schools named after Hitler. There's no Joseph Goebbels High School, Joseph Goebbels Elementary School, Hitler High School. There's none of that in Germany. They don't honor them at all. Yet look at America and its dumb and its arrogance. Naming high schools after Robert E. Lee. A shame. Naming streets after him and other Confederate soldiers and such. What an insult. And like I said, naming army bases after Confederate traitors? Yet they're upset when Colin Kaepernick takes a knee during the national anthem. Isn't the Confederate flag more of an insult to America? Isn't honoring Confederate traitors more of an insult than taking a knee during the national anthem? Right? You would think they'd be more upset when anybody would fly the Confederate flag. Matter of fact, I'm going to make a video that may be one of my next live streams in the future, inshallah, where I get people to remember that the Confederates were traitors. Why should they have any honor in this country? You should be more upset about people who bring the Confederate flag around you than somebody kneeling during the national anthem. The Confederate flag is more of an insult to the national anthem and America than kneeling against police brutality and racial injustice. Having statues of Robert E. Lee is more of an insult to America than kneeling during the national anthem. Robert E. Lee is an insult to the national anthem. Robert E. Lee is an insult to the American flag and all that it's supposed to represent because they were traitors. So I'm glad that all these statues of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and Jefferson Davis, I'm glad Confederate flags are being removed. I'm glad their names are being taken off of schools and buildings. They should have never been given them in the first place. So the same way that the United States does not have statues to honor Benedict Arnold, they should not have statues to honor the Confederate generals and soldiers and such either. They should not have any honor in this country. They were traitors. They were traitors to this country. So with that, my brothers and sisters and others, we'll wrap it up on that. All right, we'll wrap it up on that. Let's see. Let's check out some of the comments. Let's see. PS deflection and not. Nah, that's wait. Does it say? Well, let me see. Did it say deflection? I thought it looked like it said. Let me read that again. His. Wait a minute. Defection. Defection. Okay, it says defection. His defection. Yeah, Arnold's. Okay, yeah. It says Arnold's defection. His defection made him into an instant. Good one, bro. Thanks for catching that. Yeah. Defection. Yes. His defection. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah. His defection, right. His defection is, it said defection. But yeah, it says the Revolutionary War was fought for Masonic Zionists to print America's money. Sammy says the Confederates are worse than Al-Qaeda because Al-Qaeda never owed a duty of loyalty to the United States. True. The Confederates were traitors to the United States, whereas Al-Qaeda were merely foreign adversaries who, as an organization, didn't commit treason to the United States. It says, careful, brother Shadid. Before you know it, they'll rename West Point to Fort. Yeah, Fort Benedict Arnold. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, alhamdulillah, I just wanted to do this show, like I said, in the vein of Malcolm X. Because as you know, the brother Malcolm was very well-rounded. He could speak about Islam. He could speak about politics. He could speak about racial issues and racial injustice. He also taught us about history and things like that. So I'm coming to you today with this episode in the vein of our brother Malcolm X, alhamdulillah. All right. So I appreciate you guys checking in. Don't forget to like the video. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And don't forget to utilize the support to help support our platform. And like I said, I'm returning back to my goal of trying to get 10 supporters on Patreon. Last I checked, I was up to 5. Alhamdulillah, we're going back up. But I'm back on my goal. I'm going to keep pushing. My goal is to get 10. All right. We're trying to get 10 supporters on Patreon. All right. I even added another brother gave me a suggestion. I didn't know I could do it at first because I didn't see the option for it, but he said that I should make, an option where people can just donate a few dollars. So I did that. My lowest was $5, but I added, Patreon allowed me to go $3, right? So if you just want to donate a few dollars, right, you can do $3. Like I said, $5 really isn't much because it's on a monthly basis. But, I understand that because of the corona thing, the restrictions, people haven't been back to work. So things may be kind of tight. So if you can spare at least $3 a month, three simple dollars a month, then we took it to the low. That's the lowest Patreon would allow me to go, is $3. Unless, like I said, I may have to check. But the brother was like, bro, add, you should add like a small dollar amount. He said $2. I didn't see that option, but I did see $3. So the lowest I could go, maybe they allowed, lower for earlier Patrons, but for mine, it only allows me to go as low as $3. So for those who it may be kind of tight in the pockets, but you still want to support your brother, I now have again, listen to what I'm saying. I now have a $3 option. And this is $3 a month to support your brother. So hopefully, inshallah, that'll get us more supporters. If but of course, if you got more, if you can spare more, then mashallah. But for those who it may be kind of tight, but you feel that you want to help your brother out, $3 simple dollars, $3 to support, inshallah. All right. And again, my goal is to get 10. And then once we reach 10, then inshallah, we'll shoot for 15 and then maybe 20 and so forth and so on. All right. And again, remember that those who oppose, I wouldn't say oppose, but those who hate Islam, those who are spreading misinformation and propaganda about Islam to demonize us and what we believe in, they have their supporters. I checked another well-known hater against Islam. You may have heard of him. His name is Apostate Prophet. He has 495 supporters on Patreon. 495 supporters on Patreon. Your brother, Mr. Islam, has only 5. So for those of you who are saying that you want to see the Muslims challenge these people, you want to see the Muslims speak out against these people, you wish you had more Muslim voices. Well, here you go. But what's the difference? Is that these people have their people behind them. And I've always seen this, man, is that the evil always has more supporters, man. The evil always has more supporters, man. They always get more, man. I don't know why that is. Why do people who are on the good side, why do the good people who are on the side of the good, why don't you ever support the people like the haters support their people, man? You know what I mean? Like why don't the people on the right side ever really support their people the way the haters support their people, man? 495 supporters this guy has, and David has 800 and something. And I'm trying to squeeze out 10. Your brother, I've been doing this for years, man. Your brother, Mr. Islam, is trying to squeeze 10 supporters, man. Yet these guys can easily get 890 something people, 495 supporters, but I gotta squeeze and to get 10. Come on, brothers and sisters, for real, man, for real. And remember, man, remember, it's for a good cause. Is feast, give it for the pleasure of Allah. You know that Islam teaches that when you give in such forms that you get blessings, right? You get rewarded tenfold. So you give me $3, but you give me $3, you're gonna get tenfold in return, inshallah. You get $10, you get tenfold. Allah gives you tenfold back. You give $100, you get tenfold back. You get $5, whatever you give, you're gonna get back. Allah says He gives tenfold back. It's permissible to give sadaqah for those who are doing in the way of dawah. It's permissible to give sadaqah and zakat in the cause of those who are defending Islam. It's permissible to do so. So don't lose your blessings, brothers and sisters. Help your brother out. And as I promised you, I promise you that you won't see me like the Christians do. You won't see me driving around in a Rolls Royce, right, from your money, unless I buy it myself, okay, with my own money. But you won't see your brother using it so I can live in a $5 million mansion, okay, inshallah. All right, you won't see me using it so I can walk around in expensive suits like the Christians when they take the money from their people, right? All right, inshallah, I promise to not misuse it. I promise to use it exactly what we said for, so I can do more videos, so I can expand my platform, so I can increase my outreach. All right. So whatever nice car I have, I give you my word that it'll be my own. Right. It'll be based on my own. And I already have a nice car, alhamdulillah. But it won't be because I misused your money to get a Ferrari or a Bentley or, all right. You know, the clothes that I'm wearing, these are my own clothes. I promise you, I won't use it to be buying $5,000 suits and you know, and all of that. OK. All right. Inshallah. And may Allah keep me to my word. May Allah make me stay and keep my word to you, brothers and sisters. But in all seriousness, you know what I mean? in all seriousness, you know, in all seriousness, support your brother the same way these people support their people. Support your brother the same way these people support the David Woods, the apostate prophets, the Robert Spencers, etc. All right? All right. Yeah, you're right, H-Foul. You're right. It's sad. It's sad that I got to beg for $3 rather than just have the people just come and support the brother the same way the people just give the money to David Wood and apostate prophet and all of that. So, yeah, you're right. It is sad. All right. But inshallah, the brothers and sisters understand and you will do the right thing. All right. So, again, utilize the links in the description of this video and support your brother, inshallah. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we're going to close out, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream, inshallah. Don't forget, you can also catch me on Pal Talk. Sometimes I'm on Pal Talk. If any of you haters want to get at me, come on over to Pal Talk. We can you know, we can go one-on-one live right there, right? We can go one-on-one live right there. All right, H-Foul. All right, yeah, I know you're a hater. I know you from the other videos, so relax yourself. Relax yourself, you hate-filled punk. Relax yourself, all right? Relax yourself. Slow down, all right? We know you're a hater, okay? Punk coward. But like I said, if you want to get at me, I'm on Pal Talk all the time, all right? I'm on Pal Talk all the time. So if you really want to get at me and you're not a coward, bring yourself to Pal Talk and we can debate and argue right there, live, all right, coward? So yeah. Yeah, nah, he's a hater. He's a hater. Because I've seen him make comments on some of my other video. He's a hater. So, he's a hater. Yeah, he's a hater. Yeah, whatever. Yep. That's you, buddy. That's you. That's exactly who you are, punk. Like I said, come face me then. That's all you got to do. Come on Pal Talk Live and we can get it in. We can get it in. No problem, you punk. All right? Don't want to get me started. Yeah, don't want to get me started. Don't want to get me started. No, you don't. You don't. For real. But like I said, enough with the haters. Enough worrying about the haters. I'll check you guys on the next one, inshallah. All right? Appreciate you guys' support. Assalamu alaikum.